اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Abd al-Malik ibn Umair Rahimahullah narrates that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Surah Al-Fatiha as a cure for every ailment, mentioned by Darimi. Abu Hurairah radiyallahu ta'ala anhu narrates that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, when any of you says Ameen after reading Surah Al-Fatiha and the angels in the heavens say Ameen at the same time, and both these Ameen coincide with each other, then all the person's past sins are forgiven, mentioned by Bukhari. And Nawaz ibn Saban al-Kilabi radiyallahu ta'ala anhu narrates, I heard the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam saying, the Quran and its people who used to practice on it will be brought forward on the day of resurrection. Surah Al-Baqarah and Surah Al-Imran, which are the early surahs of the Quran, will be at the forefront, mentioned by Muslim. Abu Hurairah radiyallahu ta'ala anhu narrates that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, do not turn your houses into graves. Surely shaitan flees from the house in which Surah Al-Baqarah is recited, mentioned by Muslim. Abu Umama al-Bahili radiyallahu ta'ala anhu narrates, I heard the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam saying, recite the Quran, for it will come on the day of resurrection and as an intercessor for its companions. Recite the two luminous surahs, Al-Baqarah and Al-Imran, for they shall certainly come on the day of resurrection like two clouds, or like two canopies, or like two sections of a bird whose wings are spread out in flight. They shall advocate on behalf of their companions. Recite Surah Al-Baqarah, because adopting it is a source of blessing and abandoning it is a source of remorse, and the magicians are unable to overpower it, mentioned by Muslim. Abu Hurairah radiyallahu ta'ala anhu narrates that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Surah Al-Baqarah contains a verse which is the leader of the verse of the Quran. When it is recited in a house in which there is shaitan, he most certainly flees from that house. The verse is Ayat al-Kursi, mentioned by Hakim. Abu Hurairah radiyallahu ta'ala anhu narrates that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam entrusted me to safeguard the zakah of Ramzan. While I was fulfilling this responsibility, a person came to me and began picking some of the food of zakah with his hands. I caught him and said, I am going to take you to the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam for trying to steal. He said, I am a needy person and I have a family to see. I am in desperate need, so I let him go. The next morning, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked me, O Abu Hurairah, what happened to your prisoner last night? I replied, O Messenger of Allah, he complained of being in need and having a family to see to. I therefore showed mercy to him and let him go. He sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, listen, he lied to you and he will come back. When the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said this, I was convinced that he will most certainly come back. I therefore lay in wait for him. He came again and began taking some food. I said to him, I am going to take you to the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, let me go, for I am in need. I have a family to see to. I will not come back. I showed mercy to him and let him go. The next morning, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked me, O Abu Hurairah, what happened to your prisoner last night? I replied, O Messenger of Allah, he complained of being in need and having a family to see to. I therefore showed mercy to him and let him go. He sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, he lied to you and he will come back. I lay in wait for him for the third time. He came and began taking some food. I caught him and said, I am going to take you to the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and this is the last of the 3 times that you claimed that you will not come back, but you are still coming back. He said, let me free and I will teach you some words with which Allah Jalla Jalaluhu will benefit you. I asked, what are they? He said, when you go to bed, recite Ayatul Kursi, Surah Al-Baqarah. He said, when you go to bed, recite Ayatul Kursi. Allah Jalla Jalaluhu will remain a constant guard over you, and no shaitan will approach you till the next morning. So I let him free. The next morning, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked me, what happened to your prisoner last night? I replied, O Messenger of Allah, he claimed that he will teach me some words with which Allah Jalla Jalaluhu will benefit me. He asked, what words did he teach you? I replied, he said to me, when you go to bed, recite Ayatul Kursi from beginning to end. Allahu la ilaha illa huwal hayyul qayyum. He also said to me, Allah Jalla Jalaluhu will remain a constant guard over you, and no shaitan will approach you till the next morning. The Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, listen, he spoke the truth despite being a big liar. O Abu Huraira, do you know who you were conversing with for the last 3 nights? I replied, no. He said, that was shaitan. Mentioned by Bukhari. The narration of Abu Ayyub Ansari radiallahu ta'ala anhu states, the shaitan said, continue reciting Ayatul Kursi in your house, and no shaitan, jinn, etc. will come near you. Mentioned by Tirmidhi. Ubay ibn Ka'ab radiallahu ta'ala anhu narrates that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, O Abu al-Mundhir, do you know which verse of the Quran is the greatest? I replied, Allah and His Messenger knows best. He asked, O Abu al-Mundhir, do you know which verse of the Quran is the greatest? I replied, Allahu la ilaha illa huwal hayyul qayyum. He struck me on my chest and said, may knowledge be of benefit to you, O Abu al-Mundhir. Mentioned by a Muslim. Another narration states, I take an oath by that being in whose control is my life. This verse has a tongue and 2 lips. It glorifies the Master at the base of the throne, Arsh. Mentioned by Ahmad. Abu Huraira radiallahu ta'ala anhu narrates that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, everything is a high point, and the high point of the Quran is Surah Al-Baqarah. In it is a verse which is the leader of the verses of the Quran. It is Ayatul Kursi. Mentioned by Tirmidhi. Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhu narrates, while Jibreel was sitting with the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, some loud sound was heard from above. He raised his head and said, a door of the heavens has been opened, which was never opened before this day. An angel has descended from it, and he never descended to earth before this day. The angel came, offered the salam, Islamic greeting, and said, glad tidings over 2 lights which you have been given, and which no prophet before you was given. One is Surah Al-Fatiha, and the other is the last 2 verses of the Surah Al-Baqarah. No matter which letter of these 2 you read, you shall receive them. Mentioned by a Muslim. Note, this means that if a verse contains words of praise, you will receive the reward of praising. If a verse contains words of supplication, dua, the supplication will be accepted. And Nu'man ibn Bashir radiallahu ta'ala anhu narrates that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Allah Jalla Jalaluhu wrote a book 2000 years before He created the heavens and the earth. From it, He revealed 2 verses which He concluded Surah Al-Baqarah. When they are recited for 3 nights in a house, shaitan can never approach that house. Mentioned by Tirmidhi. Abu Mas'ud al-Ansari radiallahu ta'ala anhu narrates that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, the person who recites 2 verses from the end of Surah Al-Baqarah in a night, they will suffice him. Mentioned by Tirmidhi. Note, this could have 2 meanings. Number 1, the person who recites these verses will be safeguarded against every evil on that night. Number 2, these 2 verses will take the place of Tahajjud Salah. Imam Nawawi Rahimahullah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the tawfiq to make amal upon whatever we have listened to, and may He give us the tawfiq to send this to others, inshallah. Subhanallah bihamdihi, subhanakallahumma bihamdika, nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayh.